thank you and welcome back. I think our panelists have had a pretty easy time with me throwing lollipops up there and throwing some puff questions. Joking, obviously. We'd like to hear what the audience thinks, and then, of course, Twitter. So we have a couple strategically placed people throughout the room, and they're going to hand some microphones to people and see exactly what they think. So, questions from the audience?
Both Apple and Adobe have made attractive switch offers. Are any of you aware of any major post houses, film production companies, anybody that's actually dumping Final Cut 7 and switching to either Avid or Premiere?
In case it didn't come through to everyone, both Premiere and Avid have very attractive switch offers. So are any of you familiar with any large facilities who are making the changeover because of this attractive cross-grade or switch offer?
I heard about a friend of mine works over at Telepictures at Warner's, and it wasn't because of the offer, but it was because they got so pissed off at Apple that they dumped all their Macs and are going all PC. So not because of that. I know some people are taking advantage of that offer, and it's great, but the other way pissed people off. So.
Wow. The comments that I've heard are that everybody is looking at everything, but nobody's making any decisions for another couple of months. My sense is that decisions will be made in the November timeframe as they start to allocate budgets for next year. But there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of thought, but there's a huge amount of money in infrastructure that's got to change if they're going to go to something different. And it's foolish to do that when you don't have sufficient information.
Mm-hmm. In education, we have a slightly different buying time frame because we need to make our decisions in the spring in order to basically effect and make the transition. So we're basically, that was pre-release, so no one was thinking of anything like that anyway. In education, everyone's talking about what happens in next calendar year, so inevitably they're going to wait to make that decision.
Thank you. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, Mr. Marks.
Yes. I'm curious when it comes to FCPX if there's a real vision at work here. I'm hearing a lot of things about, rendering, drag and drop, a lot of operational things. But are you really seeing an editorial vision at work?
So just to make sure everyone heard, with all the changes in how Final Cut 10 works, are you really seeing an editorial vision at work for this product?
I think that's a great question. My personal opinion is absolutely. I don't think they're knitting like an 8-arm sweater, right? And they'll figure it out someday, like how Lost is written. Like, I don't think it'll be, I think they actually know where they're going with it, and they have a plan, because this isn't their first crack at doing this. This is their first crack at giving themselves an opportunity to perhaps, as many filmmakers say, actually I think it was Inception, that Christopher Nolan said, I wanted to make this movie way before these other movies I made. I think I read this. But he says, technology wouldn't let me. I had to keep holding back on this movie until the world could accept it because I could actually deliver it correctly. I believe that a lot of the technology I've seen into it, and in discussions with some of the people on the inside, this is a product, in my opinion, that is allowing them to do things that Final Cut 7 and through 1 couldn't let them do. And this is the same thing they did in 1999 with OS 10 in terms of they couldn't do things in 9, and they had to, unfortunately, go backwards to go forwards.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but disagreeing with Michael is a life-challenging experience, so I'm not sure I want to say he's wrong. I've had a couple of conversations. I get a very schizophrenic feel from Final Cut 10, is that, it's got support for 4K images. Why would any consumer need support for a 4K image? It's just, and you look at the precision editor, there's stuff in the precision editor, maybe the magnetic timeline appeals to consumers, but there's stuff that's dialed in that's way beyond the need of any average editor. And yet there's so much stuff that they forgot that it feels like that it was put together by a committee. And the two sides of the committee couldn't exactly agree. Well, we want it to be more iMovie-ish, or we want it to be more Final Cut-ish, and so they put in iMovie features. Take a look at the themes if you want to get cheesy. I mean, look at some of the stuff that they've got in the effects. And then they put in 4K. Then they put in this metadata to die for metadata. And yet, we get some weird dissolves. It's like we're not exactly sure what it wants to do when it grows up. And I get a very schizophrenic feel. And it's one of the reasons I'm really anxious to see the next upgrade, because I want to see what their long-term vision is. Apple always has a long-term vision. I agree with that. But I'm not sure the long-term vision's been properly revealed in this version of the software. I think we're seeing that there's some different kind of tea leaves, but they haven't settled down for us to be able to say this is the kind of tea leaves they are.
Did they take out star wipes, or is that still?
Star wipes, not only are star
If
wipes
they're thinking
there.
big, that needs to
Are
stay.
you sitting down?
Everything
Star
there.
wipes are not only there, but you can keyframe them. And so you can do a rotating keyframe star wipe with a soft edge. I mean, I think
That's
the
a big
world is
change.
ready for
We
it.
have
know,
our answer
you know,
then. There's a vision.
To wrap this point, just the one point up for the next question, I once heard a very wise editor once say, there's only one man in this world who should use wipes, and his name is George Lucas. So what are the questions we have from the audience? Why don't we get a microphone to you so everyone can hear exactly what you have to say?
I don't know if this is exactly going to be a question, but it's more of a comment. I'm a professional editor and have over the years been looking at both Avid and Final Cut Pro. And I think one of the things that professional editors initially encountered with Apple's attitude towards Final Cut Pro was that they weren't listening to what editors wanted, that they were just sort of proprietary, and they would just say, here's what it is. I remember, when Final Cut Pro 3 came out, and I said, I'm an Avid editor. Aren't you guys interested in knowing what an Avid editor's feedback is on this software? And their attitude was basically, no, because we know better. So through the different versions of Final Cut Pro up to Final Cut Pro 7, people were pretty happy with it. They were getting more developed and more, I think, in terms of what the professionals wanted. But now with Final Cut Pro 10, it's like all that was completely thrown out, and they weren't listening. No one was. These are answers to questions that no one, at least in the professional editing community, were asking. Mm-hmm. So, where is so the conclusion is that Apple is just letting go of the professional community totally. And so, is that where you think this is?
Can I ask you a question first, which is, what kind of editing do you do?
Television shows.
Television shows, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's absolutely a chunk of the market that we mean when we say professional.
Mm-hmm.
Feature editors, also, I think you would agree, are part of that market. And a lot of feature editors want very different things out of their NLE than a television editor does. And a television editor who's doing drama is asking for different things than someone who's doing a 4-camera or 3-camera show or doing a reality-based show, and different than someone who's doing wedding and event videography, but who's making all of their cash out of that. So I guess I would ask, is what does professional mean? And I don't mean to open up that ridiculous can of worms, but that every group of editors wants something different that's super important to them. And I think it's really hard. The top level people are the whiniest 100,000 worth of editor, feature editors. We are super whiny and ask for a lot, and especially want it all for free or very little money.
In fact, we had to send a car for Norman tonight.
I'll say you.
Thank you for that Ford Fairlane.
One of the reasons automobiles are so well designed is because people that design them drive them to work every day. And that's one of the rare opportunities for some products that are users and engineers are the same person. That doesn't happen all the time. And especially in nonlinear editing, the users are not the designers. That's just the nature of how we're wired, I suppose.
But Lightworks actually was originally designed by editors. and you could feel that in the interface.
That's true, but the methodology associated with the computerized processing and engineering behind under the hood
Right.
is not an
alien
editor.
test. That's
it's
right.
not an editor. Where an auto manufacturer, he is the guy under the hood. So I'll play devil's advocate. So I understand why you have to. It's important that they have to reach out to do that, and I can tell you that Apple did do that. Obviously, you weren't on their list, but they did do that with a number of editors. But to play devil's advocate with that, in the year 2000, if everyone was polled, they polled 1,000 people that had Discmans at the height of the Discman world. 1,000 people, everybody in this room and 900 other people. And they said, what would make a better Discman? Not one person would have described the iPod. Not one. Because they lacked the ability to conceive of something that was yet to be breathed into existence. And it took innovation beyond the users who often have blinders. You know, I know this can be, I'm not trying to be a heretic here, but we can have blinders and that comfortability, because I understand what it's like to be in a supervised session and to I will do anything for this person to leave, you know? That's a common feeling. And in dealing with that, the last thing you want to do is have a machine that doesn't work exactly the way it should feel. But that's how we sort of get out of our comfort zone, is we need people to think for us. And I've been criticized recently for saying, people misconstrued a statement I said, I suppose, but I said Apple, in some cases, and in this case, engineers can know what's better for us than we know for ourselves, because they're higher up, they can see a greater distance. And we can be at the bottom of the poop deck, swapping the deck and telling the captain doesn't know what he's doing, but he's got a higher vantage point, he can see further. And I do believe in this case, Adobe, Avid, and Apple all have slightly better vantage points than some of us, and we'll see what they do with each other in this. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah.
These tools allow us to just let it flow.
It really is at the cutting edge of technology right now.